There is a number in life that many people reach, but not everyone truly moves beyond. The mid-70s. It is more than a statistic, it is a psychological threshold, a point where the momentum of a lifetime often meets a profound, quiet stillness. You may have noticed it in others, a gentle fading, a diminishing spark, a retreat from the world that seems to have less to do with the body and more to do with something inside. If you were younger, you might wonder with a quiet dread if this will be your path as well. If you are approaching this age yourself, you may feel its shadow beginning to stretch. This is not a conversation about medicine. It is a conversation about meaning, about what sustains a human spirit across decades and what happens when that sustenance quietly runs out. On this channel, we explore the deeper psychology of aging with honesty and compassion. If this is a journey you wish to understand more deeply, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support allows us to continue these important reflections. You can also find a playlist on finding purpose in later life linked at the end. Today, we explore the quiet, internal reasons why the will to continue can fade after 75. It begins with a single, heavy realization that often comes far too late. Imagine you have spent your entire life saving a rare, vintage bottle of wine. You carry it carefully through crowded trains. You keep it in a special cupboard during chaotic house moves. You protect it from sunlight and temperature changes. You envision the perfect moment to open it, a grand celebration, a moment of hard-earned peace, surrounded by the right people. You wait for that moment. You postpone smaller joys because they are not worthy of this bottle. You tell yourself the waiting is part of the pleasure. And then, one day, you finally decide the time has come. You retrieve the bottle, carefully uncork it, and pour a glass. You raise it to your lips, and you discover the wine has turned to vinegar. It has been slowly spoiling in the dark while you were waiting for the perfect conditions that never arrived. This is the first and perhaps most devastating psychological shift that occurs for many as they reach their 70s. It is the realization that the central promise you built your life upon, the promise of later, has expired. The future you invested in has finally arrived, and it is not the country you were promised. The currency you traded your present moments for has been devalued. For decades, you operated on a simple, powerful formula. Present sacrifice equals future reward. You endured the job you did not love for the pension it would provide. You stayed in the practical, sensible house, delaying the dream of a place that felt truly like a home. You bit your tongue in relationships to keep the peace, telling yourself you would address the real issues someday when you had more energy, more security, more time. You postponed the pilgrimage to your ancestral village, the learning of the instrument, the writing of the memoir, the mending of the friendship. Later was not just a word, it was a psychological sanctuary, a place where your true, unfettered self was safely stored, waiting for the conditions to be right to emerge. The problem is that the self is not a static object you can store. It is a living process. It requires engagement, expression, and challenge to stay alive. By perpetually postponing your authenticity, your curiosities, your passions, your difficult but necessary conversations, you were not preserving yourself. You were putting those parts of yourself into a form of suspended animation. And like any muscle left unused, they atrophy. The passion for painting withers into a vague, "I wish I had." The courage for vulnerable conversation stiffens into a resigned, "It's too late to bring that up now." The dream of travel is slowly buried under the more immediate comforts of routine and the growing physical hesitations. So you arrive at 75. The external pressures have lifted. The career is over. The major financial obligations are met. The active daily demands of parenting are long gone. You have, at last, the freedom you worked for. And you step into this freedom like a traveler stepping into a vast, empty plain. The landscape is silent. The compass you used for navigation, the compass of duty, obligation, and external expectation, has no needle here. It spins uselessly. You are faced with the terrifying question, what now? And more hauntingly, who am I now that I am no longer what I do? This moment of reckoning carries a unique, quiet grief. It is the grief for the person you might have been, the more spontaneous version of you, the more courageous one, the one who said yes to adventure and no to soul-crushing demands. That person feels like a ghost, a potential self that never got to live. The person you actually became, the responsible one, the prudent one, the one who always chose security over aliveness, now feels like a shell. You lived a life of preparation, but you never learned how to live the life you were preparing for. The regret here is not for a single mistake. It is a systemic regret. It is regret for an entire life architecture built on a faulty premise. You look back and see a maze you navigated with skill and determination, only to find the prize at the center was not what you wanted. Or worse, there was no prize at all. The energy you expended feels, in retrospect, like a profound misallocation of a finite resource, your life force. This systemic regret manifests as a deep, soul-level fatigue. Doctors may call it depression or low energy, and they're not wrong, but its root is often existential. It is the fatigue of a story that no longer makes sense. The narrative you told yourself, I am struggling now so that I can enjoy later, has reached its final chapter, and the ending is hollow. The protagonist has nothing left to want, nothing left to strive for. Without a compelling narrative, without a desired future to pull you forward, the psyche begins to stall. Why get up? Why engage? Why push through another day when all the days are essentially the same and the horizon holds no new promise? This fatigue is the first sign of the will beginning to disengage. It is not a conscious decision to give up. It is a slow, subconscious withdrawal of investment from a project, the project of your own life, that appears to have yielded a poor return. The body, ever the faithful servant of the mind, begins to follow suit. It slows down. It becomes more susceptible to illness. It loses its resilience, not because it must, but because the central command, the will to persist, has received no compelling new orders. And in this quiet, fatigued space, a second, profound emptiness makes itself known. You look around at the life you built, the partner who sits across from you, the children who call on Sundays, the empty guest rooms, and you realize with a chill that you feel profoundly alone, not because you are physically isolated, but because the connections that surround you feel historical, not alive. You have shared a life, but you have slowly ceased sharing your inner world. And this unspoken loneliness becomes the second powerful engine of decline. The promise of later has expired, leaving a quiet emptiness. And into that emptiness, the oldest and deepest fear whispers, the fear of being truly alone, even in a crowd. This is where we must look next. The music holds, then begins a very slow fade.
Loneliness, in its most profound form, has little to do with being by yourself. It is the experience of being unseen. It is the feeling that your essence, your fears, your quiet wonders, your unspoken sorrows, exists in a soundproof room within you, while the world interacts only with your outline. This specific loneliness becomes the silent companion for many in their later years. It is not that people have left, it is that true connection has departed, leaving only its shell behind. You can be sitting in your living room, your spouse reading a book in their chair, a family photograph from 20 years ago smiling from the mantelpiece. The physical space is shared, the history is immense and intertwined, and yet a vast silent prairie stretches between your two chairs. You both inhabit the same house, but you have ceased to inhabit the same emotional world. The conversations have been distilled to the practical and the past. Did you take your pill? What do you want for dinner? Remember when the kids? The language of the present inner life, the "I'm afraid of what's next," the "I feel irrelevant," the "Do you ever wonder if we got it all wrong?" has fallen into disuse. To speak it now would feel like breaking a long-held unspoken pact to protect each other from the full weight of your shared fragility. This distance is not created in a day. It is engineered over decades with the very best intentions. You began to edit yourself long ago. A bad day at work was met with a clipped "I'm fine" to avoid burdening your partner with yet another problem. A creeping sense of professional disappointment was swallowed because admitting it felt like a failure of the provider role. As parents, you presented a united, stable front, hiding your own doubts and marital tensions from the children. You were building a family, a legacy, a safe structure, and in the process, you inadvertently bricked over the windows between your souls. You became expert managers of a joint life, but you lost the practice of being intimate strangers, curious about each other's evolving inner landscapes. The psychology at work here is one of emotional redundancy. As your active roles in society diminish, the worker, the daily parent, the community organizer, you can begin to feel that your emotional experiences are also redundant. Who needs to hear your anxieties about mortality? Your adult children are busy building careers and families. Your worries would only be a dark cloud on their horizon. Your friends are grappling with their own aches and losses. To add yours to the pile feels selfish. Your partner, you assume, is carrying their own silent burden. Why add to its weight? So you perform wellness. You become a curator of your own silence. You learn to say, "I'm okay," with such conviction that everyone, including yourself, believes it. The performance becomes your reality, and the lonely self within becomes a ghost you only meet in the mirror at night. This isolation is compounded by the slow-motion departure of friends. They do not leave in anger. They leave in increments. One moves to a retirement community for the climate. Another becomes fully absorbed in the world of grandchildren. Another's world shrinks to the four walls of a room due to illness or caregiving for their own spouse. Each departure is a quiet amputation. With each friend who fades, a piece of your shared history, and therefore a piece of your own verified identity, becomes less real. They were witnesses. Without witnesses, your memories start to feel like dreams you once had. The phone rings less. The calendar empties. The world, which once felt like a network of connections, now feels like a series of closed doors. In this shrinking social universe, you turn inward. But the inner world, when not refreshed by new experiences, new conversations, new shared moments, becomes a museum, and you are its only patron. You wander the halls, lingering at the exhibits of memory. The laughter of your children at a specific birthday party, the feeling of your father's hand on your shoulder, the exhilaration of a professional triumph long since faded. These memories are vivid, sensory, and safe. The people in them are frozen in time, forever loving, forever present.
They do not disappoint or drift away. They are perfect because they are finished. And here lies the danger. You begin to prefer the company of these ghosts to the company of the living. The real people in your life, your spouse, your children, your remaining friends, are flawed, changing, distracted, and living in a present that often excludes you. They are complicated. The ghosts are simple. They offer unconditional love because they are a creation of your own longing. This retreat into the museum of memory is a critical psychological withdrawal from the present. It is a vote of no confidence in the future. Why invest in new, risky, real-world connections when you have a perfect, painless archive of connection at your mental fingertips? This is how a person can be surrounded by family and yet be dying of loneliness. The body is present at the holiday dinner, but the spirit is miles away, having dinner with the memory of how it used to be. The ears hear the chatter of grandchildren, but the heart is listening to the echo of its own children's voices from decades past. You are there, but you are not there. You have become a visitor in your own life, politely observing the rituals, but no longer feeling the meaning in your bones. This emotional isolation has a direct, corrosive effect on the will to live. Human beings are sustained by felt connection. We are wired for mutual recognition. When that recognition fades, when you feel you are no longer truly seen, known, or needed in an essential way, a fundamental source of psychic fuel is cut off. The engine of the self begins to idle, and then to sputter. Getting up in the morning requires a reason. When your primary reasons for decades were tied to external roles and the needs of others, and those are gone, and no new internal reasons have been cultivated to take their place, the question, what for, becomes unanswerable. The days become identical, gentle slopes leading nowhere. This is not a failure of love. The love is often still there, vast and deep. It is a failure of translation. The love cannot get across the canyon that was dug spoonful by spoonful over years of unspoken words and unshared fears. The loneliness is not an absence of people. It is the presence of an uncrossable distance between hearts that beat in the same house. And so the person turns more and more to the past, where the connections feel sure and the love feels uncomplicated. But the past is a country of ghosts, and living among ghosts has a peculiar effect on the soul. It fills you with a specific, aching beauty, a beauty that is entirely composed of loss. This ache, this poignant conversation with what is gone, becomes the next chamber in the heart, and it is where we must go next. From the silence of the present, we step into the echoing halls of memory. When the present feels thin and the future holds no shape, the mind performs a quiet, desperate alchemy. It turns to the past, not to remember it, but to refine it. It takes the raw ore of lived experience and smelts it down, burning away the impurities of boredom, anxiety, and petty worry, leaving behind what feels like pure, gleaming gold. This is nostalgia in its most potent form. It is not mere recollection. It is an active emotional production. And for the aging psyche, it becomes both a sanctuary and a prison. Walk through this internal gallery. Here, in this wing, is the summer of '78. The air is not just warm, it is saturated with possibility. The song on the radio is not just a tune, it is the anthem of your youth. Your body in this memory does not ache, it is a vessel of limitless energy. The friends are not flawed individuals with their own problems, they are archetypes of loyalty and joy. This is the past, distilled to its emotional essence. It is breathtakingly beautiful, and its beauty is a kind of violence, because it makes the present moment, with its quiet room, its stiff joints, its simple cup of tea, feel like a faded, inferior copy. This nostalgia is triggered by the senses, the faithful archivists of the soul. The scent of a particular soap can dismantle 70 years in an instant, placing you back in your grandmother's bathroom, a child safe in a world of adult certainty. The first few notes of a forgotten melody can pull you into the passenger seat of a first car, the feeling of freedom so acute it is painful. These sensory portals are immediate and total. They do not ask permission, they simply override the present. For a few seconds, you are not old, you are there. And then the wave recedes, and you are back in your chair with the phantom feeling of that other life clinging to you like a scent you can't wash off. The contrast is devastating. But the true regret, the sharpest thorn within this rose of memory, is not for the past itself. It is for your own inattention while you were living it. Nostalgia, in its cruel clarity, now shows you what you missed. You remember your daughter's wedding day. The memory is beautiful, but with the painful focus of hindsight, you now see not just the dress and the smiles, but your own internal monologue that day. The worry about the cost, the slight tension with a relative, the preoccupation with hosting duties. You were the father of the bride, performing a role. But were you present for the seismic, fleeting moment of your child stepping into a new life? The memory now asks you that question, and the answer often brings a quiet wave of shame. You were there, but you were not awake to it. This is why nostalgic regret cuts deeper than the regret of failure. A failed business can be rationalized. A missed moment of connection cannot. It represents a failure of presence, a failure of courage to feel the depth of a moment as it was happening. You were saving the vintage wine, and in the process, you missed the taste of the ordinary fresh grapes that would have nourished you then and there. The mind, in this later stage, becomes a relentless editor, reviewing the footage of a lifetime. And it fixates on the cutscenes, the moments left on the cutting room floor, the bedtime story you rushed through, the friend you were too busy to help move, the sunset you didn't stop to watch because you were carrying groceries into the house. At the time, these were nothing, mere logistics. Now they are revealed as the very fabric of a life, and you see the holes where your attention should have been. The regret is for the love you could have poured into those ordinary moments, but withheld because you were mentally already in the next thing, the next task, the next later. This internal museum is filled with the ghosts of potential selves, the self that would have been an artist, the self that would have traveled the world alone, the self that would have said, "I love you" more freely, or "I need help" more honestly. These ghost selves haunt the corridors, silent accusations of paths not taken, and you mourn for them as if they were real people who died. In a way, they did. They were starved of attention, and they faded away. The cruelest trick this nostalgia plays is that it makes the past feel more authentic than the present. The emotions remembered, first love, youthful ambition, the fierce protectiveness of new parenthood, feel truer than the softer, more complicated feelings of now. The past becomes the real life, the present becomes a waiting room. And when you believe the best of your life is not just behind you, but is also more real than your current existence, the incentive to engage with the present dissolves. Why invest in a placeholder? Why make an effort in a dream that feels less vivid than the memory? Yet, within this painful, beautiful reverie, a seed of acceptance can be found. This deep dive into memory, for all its sorrow, is also an act of valuation.
It is your psyche, at the end of the day, telling you what actually mattered. It wasn't the promotion. It was the feeling of your team celebrating together afterwards. It wasn't the size of the house. It was the sound of your family's life echoing within its walls. The nostalgia performs a final, brutal triage. It discards the trophies and preserves the feelings. It shows you with undeniable force that the currency of a meaningful life is measured in moments of felt connection, awe, and love, not in accomplishments or accumulations.
There is a stillness that comes after the storm of striving, after the waves of regret have broken upon the shore and receded. This stillness is not empty, it is full. It is filled with a new kind of knowing, a knowledge that does not shout, but settles. It is the quiet, accumulated sediment of a lifetime of feeling, of missing, of loving, and of losing. This is the voice of wisdom. It does not tell you how to live, it simply tells you what is left when everything else has been stripped away. And what is left is both very little and everything. The first thing this quiet understands is that you are not the story you told about yourself. You are not the job title, the parental role, the sum of your achievements or failures. Those were costumes you wore, scripts you performed. The person who remains when the costumes are put away and the stage lights are dimmed is simpler, more essential. It is the conscious witness that watched it all unfold, the ambitions, the heartbreaks, the small daily heroisms and cowardices. Meeting this essential self can be frightening at first. It feels like being nobody, but with time, it begins to feel like being free. The performance is over. You can finally stop pretending, even to yourself. There is a profound peace in no longer having to be someone. From this place of simplicity, you see with unclouded eyes what actually held value. It was never the objects you accumulated, which now seem like curious artifacts from a forgotten culture. It was never the status you achieved, which evaporated the moment you left the room. The value was in the experience of being alive, specifically the experience of connection. Not the grand, dramatic connections of storybooks, but the microscopic daily ones, the feeling of your hand in another's, the understanding glance across a crowded room, the shared silence that needed no words, the weight of a child's head trusting itself to your shoulder. These moments were the true currency. You just spent most of your life mistaking the packaging for the gift. Wisdom in this late stage is largely a process of subtraction. You subtract the noise. You let go of the need to be right, to be admired, to be important in the eyes of the world. Those desires fall away like autumn leaves, revealing the bare, strong branches of what you actually need. A little comfort, a little beauty, a little love. You find that you need very little to be content, but that the little you need is of the highest quality. The perfectly brewed cup of tea, the warmth of sunlight on your cheek, the sound of a loved one's voice, even if they're just talking about something mundane. This wisdom also redefines time. You no longer see it as a linear path you are walking, with the past disappearing behind you. You begin to feel it as a vast, still pool in which you are suspended. Every significant moment of your life, every love, every loss, every joy, was a stone dropped into this pool. The ripples spread out and they never truly stop. The child you were, the lover you were, the parent you were, those selves are not gone. They are still rippling within you, shaping the surface of who you are now. Your life is not a story with a beginning, middle, and end. It is a whole, complete pattern. Seeing this, you stop chasing the next ripple and instead become still enough to feel all the ripples intersecting within you. The past is not a foreign country. It is the very water you are made of. And so, Regret itself is transformed. It loses its bitter, punishing taste. It becomes something softer, sorrow. A clean, deep sorrow that is indistinguishable from love. You regret not to torture yourself, but because the regret is the final, honest acknowledgement of love's importance. The fact that you feel a piercing regret for missing your child's school play is not a failure. It is the ultimate testament to how much you loved that child. The ache you feel for the friend you drifted from is the shadow cast by the brightness of that friendship. Wisdom allows you to stop fighting the shadow and simply bow to the substance that cast it. You forgive yourself, not because your actions were always okay, but because you understand the tired, scared, hopeful human being who performed them. You offer yourself the mercy you may have freely given to others. This is why the will to continue often fades after 75. For many, it is not a surrender to death, but a surrender into this quiet understanding. The frantic energy needed to maintain the ego, to chase the next thing, to prove your worth, that energy simply dissipates. It is seen for what it always was, an exhausting fiction. What remains is a preference for essence over activity, for being over doing. The body's decline may be a factor, but the spirit's quiet retirement often precedes it. When you have finally heard the quiet voice of what remains, the noise of the world holds little appeal. You may still enjoy its beauty, a bird at the feeder, a piece of music, but you no longer feel the need to conquer it, to own it, to post it. You can simply let it be and let yourself be with it. This is not a tragedy, it is a maturation, albeit one that our youth-obsessed culture profoundly misunderstands. The goal of a life is not to die with your engine at full throttle. The goal may be to learn how to turn the engine off and to discover the profound peace that exists in the silence that follows. The person who has integrated their regrets, who has made peace with their ghosts, who sits quietly in the knowledge of what truly mattered, may have less vitality in the conventional sense, but they may possess something rarer, serenity. So, what does this quiet voice whisper to you wherever you are on your path? It whispers, pay attention to what you will miss, not someday, but what you would miss if it were gone tomorrow. The texture of your partner's skin, the particular way your friend tells a story, the feeling of your own breath moving in and out of your body. Invest your attention there. It whispers, let the small things be enough. The perfect orange, the well-made chair, the morning light on the floor. Do not rush past them looking for a larger happiness. They are not stepping stones. They are the destination. It whispers, speak the fragile truth. Say, I was wrong. Say, I'm afraid. Say, that hurt me. Say, I love you. Do not let your love become a secret you keep from the people you love. And finally, it whispers, your worth was never in what you produced. It is in the quality of your attention. It is in the courage of your compassion for others and for yourself. You were always enough. You just spent a lifetime trying to become more, and in doing so, you missed the enough-ness that was there all along. For many crossing the threshold of 75, the slow fade is not a giving up. It is a letting in the final quiet truth. The struggle is over. The love remains. The story was always about the love. And when that is finally understood with the whole of your heart, there is a completion. The circle closes. The will to push forward into a new chapter naturally dims because the final chapter was never about what came next. It was about understanding the story you had already lived. The body may continue for a while, cradling this quiet knowing, but the spirit, having heard the voice of what remains, often has little left to say. It has arrived, and in that arrival there is a deep, wordless peace. This is the message from the stillness.
It is not a warning, it is an invitation. An invitation to listen for that quiet voice now, long before the world grows silent, so that your whole life can be lived in its light. The voice is speaking. It has been speaking all along.